Hi guys, so a couple of things. Firstly, there will be spoilers today. This movie is 65 years old at this point. And secondly, thank you to those people who left comments saying that my new shooting spot makes it look like I'm in a padded cell. This morning I looked around for a marker pen. What I wanted to do was write like a tally chart up here just to make it look like I was counting down the days in my cell, but sadly I couldn't find any such pen, so the joke had to be abandoned. But anyway, the other night I had a hankering for some Cushing, and luckily for me, not all Peter Cushing horror movies are covered under Hammer or Amicus. By the way, it's a genuine phenomenon, the hankering for Cushing. It can strike a man anytime, anywhere. One time I was literally 10-pin bowling and I suddenly had the hankering for Cushing. I stopped the game, went home and watched the Gorgon. It's a thing. It's actually a thing. Another time I was out having dinner with my wife on an anniversary, and halfway through the main course the hankering for Cushing suddenly swept over me, and so I got up, walked out, went home and watched Brides of Dracula. At least until the wife came home and turned the film off at the mains and gave me a slap. No, these are not real stories. But what is true is that the other night I just genuinely wanted to watch a Peter Cushing film for the first time in ages. As to how I picked out The Flesh and the Fiends, there was nothing very scientific about it. I just went through Cushing's filmography and until my finger came across the first Cushing horror that I'd not yet seen, and so here we are. Had I looked at a blurb of this, though, before putting it on, I might have skipped this one, or at least put it on the back burner for a while, because the plot summary makes it seem like a very derivative sort of film. So you've got Peter Cushing playing a science teacher who is having dead bodies brought to him in the middle of the night, but that will instantly give you Frankenstein vibes, of course. And then there's the fact that Burke and Hare are the ones bringing him the dead bodies, so that brings back memories of Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. So certainly from a 2025 perspective, which is when I'm doing this review, this film does feel like it's a whole bunch of elements mixed together that, if you're familiar with Hammer and Amicus, then you've quite simply already seen. But luckily for me, I didn't realise any of this stuff until I was about 10 minutes into the film, and at that point I couldn't be bothered getting up to turn it off. So I watched the whole thing, and I'm glad that I did, because actually this is nothing like a Hammer film. First of all, it's more like a drama horror than an outright horror film. And even though John Gillings is directing this, who did 5 Hammer films in the 60s, had this actually been made by Hammer, I doubt it would have looked and felt like this at all, because this is very different. There are 3 main plot strands in this, all vying for attention, all interweaving with each other at various points of the story. So you've got Peter Cushing in his role as a teacher having bodies brought to him, you would presume for some nefarious purpose, but actually he just wants these bodies to teach. I was quite shocked at that, actually. I kept expecting there to be a scene where he'd pull a little key out of his breast pocket, look around to check that no one's watching him, and then he'd go down to a secret basement room, which is actually a lab full of beakers and giant spinny wheels, and his dead gran might be on the table, and it would turn out he'd want to attach various body parts to her to bring her back to life, only to then realise that he can't control her. But nothing like that happens. No, Peter Cushing is literally playing a normal teacher with no evil plan afoot. So where's the horror, you might ask? Well, it is provided in abundance by Burke and Hare. They take up the reins. At first they're only bringing dead bodies that they found in the street, but they realise that they can make more coin by actually killing people themselves, so they can then bring the bodies in a lot faster. And the third plot strand involves a student from one of Cushing's classes who's at a crucial stage of his studies, but he goes out one night and meets a prostitute, and if he just slept with that woman and that had been the end of it, no problem at all. But he falls in love with this woman and she likes him back as well, so they start having a relationship, but because the two of them are from completely different walks of life, they have a lot of teething troubles. So it plays out like a kind of My Fair Lady variant, but in short story form. But if you look at the 3 plot strands together, only the Burke and Hare segment is what you would call horror, and that's why this movie feels like a drama a lot of the time rather than a horror film. You compare it to something like Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, where Burke and Hare were killing people and bringing bodies to Ralph Bates, who was then doing his own evil, sinister things. So the whole movie felt like a very rich and packed horror palette, whereas The Flesh and the Fiends is more of a real life spin on what would happen if two people like Burke and Hare were running amok. But I appreciated this take on the material. It's just something I've not seen before from all these different elements. This film has a secret weapon, and its name is Donald Pleasance. What a phenomenal performance he puts in here. I've probably seen 15, 20 films that Pleasance has done over time. This is one of the best acting performances from him I've seen. Not one of the best movies he's done necessarily. There are probably other Donald Pleasance films I'd rather rewatch than this one. But still, his portrayal of Mr. Hare in this is superb. I think this is the third Burke and Hare film I've seen. These portrayals of the two characters right here are the ones that I'm going to remember 10, 15 years down the line. And especially Donald Pleasance as Hare. He is superb. He's playing the character as a kind of Irish rascal, an Irish greengrass, sort of like a murderous, artful dodger. I just imagine him doing a little sing-song in this. You've got to kill a beggar or two. Speaking of the music, though, there's not much going on there in this movie. I don't remember anything musical, really, although late on there's a sequence where Burke and Hare get chased into a building by a mob full of people carrying torches and angry scowls on their faces, and I thought this was going to be the end of the movie. I thought Hare would like belly flop off the top of the building screaming, "Choke on it, you bastards," or something like that. But no, there's this whole other section still to come where we have a trial, a hanging, Hare is released somehow, and bits and pieces going on in the other plot threads. There's loads of stuff, but it all starts happening really fast, as if the movie has suddenly realised that we're running out of runtime. And I kind of feel like in a more modern movie we would have had something musical going on here, a kind of montage. Like if it had been a Scorsese film, for example, we would have had like House of the Rising Sun or Layla and the Dominoes, as this whole area starts to go down the tubes. The murderers are going down, the science teacher might lose his job, the prostitute ring has lost its biggest star, and so on. But it's a credit to this movie that I actually wanted more from this third act. I wanted to see more of the trial. I wanted to see how Hare managed to beat the system. You know, I wanted the film to go into more detail about some of these plot developments, and I think that's quite impressive that I felt this way, given that we were probably already like an hour and 15, an hour and 20 minutes into it at this point. I've got to go back to Hare quickly because this turn is absolutely superb. It's not that Pleasance is just playing this character as a straightforward cheeky chappy scoundrel winking and nodding his way through the movie. There's genuine complexity to this character, and there's a clear arc going on from start to finish, because these two guys, they don't start out killing people, that they sort of move into it gradually. But there's a real brutality with the kills when they happen. People die hard in this film. Like, they struggle, they break free, they run around the room, there's scuffles and dust flying everywhere. Hare causes a lot of this because he's such a coward, and he likes to stand aside and let Burke do the killing. Burke can't always get it done on his own because it's not like he's some master assassin. So Hare then has to join in, and it gets really complicated, and they really do risk exposure to themselves, and eventually they do get exposed. But I just liked this very believable portrayal of violence. I could easily imagine that if a couple of scallywags did decide to start killing people in the dark reaches of London, this is what it might look like. You know, it's not going to be Assassin's Creed with convenient, you know, slits across the throat or just a big bop over the back of the head. It would look a little bit like this, very messy, and the killers would in all honesty be just as scared as the victims, because that's what it looks like during this film. The killers look really scared, trying to pull off what they're trying to do, but that just made the whole thing fascinating to me. Going back to the character that Cushing's playing briefly, Dr. Knox, there's a bit of a talking point at the end of this film as to whether he deserves his big reprieve or not, and I would say that it's a very grey area, to be honest. I don't mind forgiving him for using dead bodies for his teaching. I think back in the time period that this film was set, I think it was probably necessary, because medicine would have severely needed to jump forward as quickly as possible, and if that meant using dead bodies, then go for it. I probably wouldn't approve of such practices today. Medicine has obviously come on a lot further since then. We've now got AI and various bits of tech that can help us so that we don't have to have dead bodies lying all over classrooms and hospitals and things. One thing I can't square away with this character, though, is the fact that he ignored the clear signs that Burke and Hare were killing people. I mean, he would have examined the bodies, he would have known what was going on, and yet he chose to ignore the signs, which meant that more people ended up dying. So like I said, it's a very grey thing as to whether you approve of this character getting his big round of applause at the end of the movie. When it comes to the prostitute and the guy who starts dating her, i.e. the plot strand that I've spent the least time on until now, I don't have too much to say about this, to be honest. It's a pretty nice story while it lasts. I mean, I very much predicted that the girl would fall into the hands of Burke and Hare. I figured that's where we were going. I didn't predict that the boyfriend would follow her through the Reaper's Gate barely 5 minutes later. That I did not predict. But I think the only notable thing other than that is this idea that having a relationship while you're doing a university degree is somehow this really dangerous thing that's going to leave you tired in your lectures, and it's going to cause you all matter of distractions. I guess it could do. I mean, kids are going to be kids at the end of the day. I don't think students on college campuses are going to stop having sex with each other just because they've watched The Flesh and the Fiends. Although, you know what, if you are a university student out there who has not had much success yet with the opposite sex, I would advise you to watch this film, and it might make you feel a little bit better. Just go for your degree. There's plenty of time for women down the line. Now, I don't have a copy of this movie. You can buy this on Blu-ray. It's about £15 on eBay, a little bit pricey, and especially once you've realised that it's free on YouTube. Yes, you can check this movie out completely free of charge, so I'd advise you to give it a try. But in the meantime, I am going to get to the Bag of Terror. The brand new Bag of Terror, of course. Let's see what we've got in here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 Michael Myers carving knives out of 5. It's an excellent film, this. I'd advise you to check it out genuinely. Right, shall we have a little bit of a reading update? So I am currently reading Volume 2 in the Alien Omnibus collection. I've already read Volume 1, which had 3 novels in it. This one's only got 2 novels in it, but the first book, at least, Genocide, it follows on from the previous trilogy, albeit it's got different characters this time, and we've skipped ahead a few years. So the crux of this story is that there's an expedition going to one of the alien planets because the alien queen's royal jelly has been identified as this really valuable substance that isn't just helpful for weaponry purposes, but also general pharmaceuticals. It's a pretty standard sort of alien story with a trip to a home world, and lots of people will die. But I really liked the 2 main characters in this, Alex Kozlowski and Daniel Grant. I think their byplay in the story really keeps it going. So on the whole, I'd give this one a 3.5 out of 5. Not the best I've read, but still really solid. And I've already started the second novel in this collection, Alien Harvest, so mini review to come very soon. But for now, I will bid you farewell. I think my next video will probably be another mini reviews video, so maybe I'll see you again next time for that. Bye bye.